Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. This is definitely not a recording, presented by Paul Lemasters, ICCFA's General Counsel, Jack Flynn from Broadcast Music Incorporated, and Vince Abatello from Global Music Rights. My name is Cindy Hinton, and I am the Membership Manager here at the ICCFA. Before we get started, I'd like to just take a few minutes of your time to share some important information with you. We hope that you'll be able to join us for our first signature event of the year, Dead Talks, which returns to Las Vegas January 16th through the 18th at the Park MGM Hotel. Dead Talks is ICCFA's premier sales conference that is designed with sales professionals and family service counselors in mind. Dead Talks is based off of the popular TED Talks, where the profession's top experts take the stage in fast-paced sessions. Remaining relevant is the primary focus for the 2024 program, and some of the topics include coaching, marketing, AI, retention, sales how-tos, prospecting, digital tools, sales strategy, and so much more. So, whether you want to be inspired or empowered or both for the new year, Dead Talks will be able to equip you with the skills you need for a successful year in sales. Important to note that the ICCFA's room block at the Park MGM Hotel closes on December 22nd. So don't hesitate. Please go to our website to learn more about Dead Talks and to register at iccfa.com/sales. Registration is now open for our biggest event of the year, the 2024 ICCFA Annual Convention and Exposition, being held April 10th through the 13th in Tampa, Florida. Join thousands of death care professionals for this one-of-a-kind event. Whether you're looking to expand your knowledge with world-class keynotes and in-depth educational breakouts, check out the latest and greatest products and services in our exhibit hall, or connect with your colleagues from across the globe, then you won't want to miss this event. The early registration rates are now available. So if you'd like to register or learn more information about the annual convention, please visit iccfa.com/annual. So today's webinar is free for all to attend. However, the recordings are only available to ICCFA members by logging into the member portal. This is just one of the many benefits of membership. Some other ICCFA membership benefits include our legislative and advocacy efforts. Your membership allows us to advocate on your behalf, influencing policies that matter to the death care community. We have discounts to our top-rated events, scholarship opportunities. You can attend one of our events for free if you're a member in good standing. We've got continuing education opportunities, certifications, online training programs, and so much more. So if you're not currently a member, or perhaps you're a member and just would like a refresher on the benefits that are available to you, please feel free to reach out to me directly, either by email at cindy@iccfa.com or by phone 571-267-4705. So mark your calendars for our next webinar, Embracing the Future, AI Innovations in Funeral Home and Cemetery Sales and Marketing, scheduled for January 25th at 2 p.m., presented by Welton Hong, the CEO of Ring Ring Marketing. If you should have any questions, and we hope that you do, the Q&A portion of today's webinar will take place after our presenters have completed their discussion. So feel free to type in your questions in the Q&A box on the top right of your screen. If you should think of a question after the webinar has concluded, feel free to email the speakers. Contact information will be available on the next slide. And now I am honored to introduce today's presenters. Poul Lemasters began his career in death care more than 20 years ago as a funeral director and embalmer. He quickly recognized that the growing risk and liability in death care, along with the lack of support and resources for those in this profession, made for a deadly combination. So he decided to go to law school, and he passed. Today, Poul uses his unique background in both death care and law to provide resources and counsel to other death care professionals. He gets calls for assistance in risk management, daily operational conflicts, form and contract reviews, valuations, and regulatory matters. Basically, all of the exciting issues our profession has to offer. Poul advises several funeral home, crematory, cemetery, and trade associations across the United States. He also shares his know-how with those in the field by serving as a cremation coordinator and advisor for ICCFA's Cremation Education Program. Thank you, Poul, for moderating the panel discussion today. Jack Flynn is the Assistant Vice President of Chain Sales and Licensing at BMA, Broadcast Music Incorporated, and is based in Nashville, Tennessee. In this role, Jack is responsible for overseeing the sales process for BMI's chain and association licensees. In his tenure with BMI, he's been involved in numerous facets of the licensing department, including customer relations, sales, and chain accounts. Jack is also at the forefront of growing BMI's association programs, partners, and the overall marketplace. He originally joined the company in 1993, starting out as a licensing representative, where he sold music licenses to businesses across the United States. Over the years, Jack assumed positions of more responsibilities. In 2012, he assumed the role of Assistant Vice President in the licensing department. Thank you for joining us today, Jack. And Vince Abatello is currently the Vice President of Licensing at Global Music Rights, GMR. Vince previously headed up the ASCAP General Licensing Group for 12 years prior to joining GMR in its earliest days in 2014. A veteran with decades of music licensing experience, Vince and his group continue to protect the integrity of music rights and support the greatest songwriters in the world by promoting and protecting the value of intellectual property on behalf of all GMR songwriters by licensing the public performance of their music. Vince, we appreciate you joining us today for this very important topic. And now, please help me in giving a warm welcome to all of our presenters.
All right, I think we're here, and hopefully this is working. Vince, you good? You hear me?
Gotcha.
All right, looking for Jack. I see his screen, so I know he's close by. I'm
here, Paul. You can't see me?
I don't think we can. Vince,
All
can
right.
you see him?
I can see you, Jack.
All right, then I'm fine. All right, so I get the word. We're all good. So anyway, I wanted to start off again. Thank you both for being part of this and being here today. Real quick, the reason we've wanted to do this and why we're doing it now is, more and more, really over the last few years, we've really gotten a lot of questions. I'm gonna throw COVID under the bus one more time because I don't think we can do that enough. And what we have found is that during COVID, a lot of people really started finding out a lot of true needs for their music license and also into their webcasting license. And we also saw a lot of companies that have come outside of the music industry that are offering new platforms and new options for businesses, including death care. So what it's created is a lot of new questions. We thought this would be a great time to really kind of dive into some of the questions that we are seeing and hearing and basically give everybody not only a refresher on what the music license is, but also an introduction, because what I think is really fun here today is, so we've got we got Jack, we got Vince, and Jack, you're with obviously BMI, and you can share how long of a contract you've had with our association. And then we've got GMR with Vince, who is, and I don't want to say you were the new kid on the block, but you are one of the newer PROs, and we just started an association benefit with you as well. So what I'd like to do is, I know we've heard your bio, but Jack, I'll let you go first. Can you talk a little bit about BMI, a little history? And then Vince, I'm going to give you a second as well.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. So BMI was started in 1939 by a group of broadcasters that wanted access to music they couldn't already have access to through their ASCAP license. And so BMI started with an open door policy, and that meant that all the different types of jazz music and blues music and different forms of music could be represented on the radio, because you couldn't get access to it prior to that. Since that time, BMI has grown to be the largest performing rights organization in the world in terms of number of songs, distribution, number of songwriters. We have 1.4 million songwriters, composers, and publishers, over 22 million works. Our license with the ICCFA, our current license goes back to 2005, but we've had a license that predates me. As mentioned in my bio, I started in 1993, and that license, the original license, was in place when I came on board. So we have a long-standing relationship with the ICCFA.
For just record keeping, I found what I think the original, and I think you and I talked about it, was literally typewritten. It's quite a great contract from that many years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
It looks like we may have lost Paul for a minute. Hey, Vince, maybe would you like to tell us a little bit, maybe about yourself?
Yeah, I don't see Paul, but absolutely. So I just want to thank everybody for inviting us in Global Music Rights. We are the new kid on the block. Global Music Rights was formed in 2013, so we just celebrated our 10th birthday this summer. And we were formed in 2013 by Irving Azoff and Randy Grimmett, our two co-founders. Randy was previously the head of membership at ASCAP, and Irving Azoff is an iconic music industry leader. So we're part of the Azoff company and one of the companies under the Azoff company umbrella. We have just over 100,000 songs this afternoon and 154 writers. So we're the first PRO to jump into this space in the last 75 years. Traditionally, it's been the three PROs. We're the newest entry, and just excited to continue to grow and explain who we are and what our role is within the space.
Fantastic. Thank you. So I think while we're waiting for Paul, we're going to jump a little bit ahead, and maybe we'll go through some of these questions until Paul returns. So the first question I see here is from Suzanne. What is the scope of the webcasting license? The rights grant in the agreement with the GMR we've reviewed is limited to the public performance of the compositions at the licensed premises and expressly carved out internet and other online transmissions. Although the description of the webcasting license included seems broad enough to cover our planned webcasting structure. It'd be ideal if we can access to the actual language in the agreement to confirm it's in fact sufficient. So do you want to talk a little bit about
the actual agreement that you have can be shared if you so choose. It we feel is rather comprehensive, but the details itself are in your hands to share with your members should you choose.
Right, and they should have that, and we'll make sure that they get a copy of that. If all the streams will be coming from the same site, then it should be only be one license required, and that license is for each of the physical locations. It just looks like that is a comment. Does the new license agreement include reps and warranties from GMR that the use of the compositions according to the rights granted under the agreement does not infringe upon or violate rights of any third party.
And again, the details of the agreement that you have, you can share.
Okay, fantastic. Let's see if we can get, do you represent all the music that can be used? As in, do we have to look into other groups? And I'll go ahead and I'm going to let Paul now take over now that he is back.
For how long, who knows, guy? I apologize. I have this all set up and do a lot of webinars, all that, and this is the beauty of it. Matter of fact, we're going to talk about webcasting later. So, and I don't know what was asked, so I apologize. But the one thing I want to start off with was the general: what is a music license? What does it cover? You already did that, I'm guessing.
Not really.
Not yet.
Oh, let's jump into that. So can we talk about that real quick? So a lot of people, I think, are not clear on what a music license actually is and what it covers. And then I'm going to combine this with a webcasting license. What do you want to, Jack, you want to take the music license? And Vince, I'll switch over you, kind of clarifying on the webcasting.
Yeah, no problem, Paul. To do that, I think it's a little easier to explain the full scope, and I may be jumping ahead a little bit here, but I think it's easier to explain what a performance rights organization license covers if you have the full scope. So when somebody copyrights a song, there's basically 3 rights that they have on that copyright. The mechanical right, that's the right to reproduce that mechanically, make copies of it, physical copies. A synchronization right, that's the right to take that copyrighted work and attach it to a video. And then the third right, which is the most popular right for songwriters, composers, and publishers, that's the performance right. That's the right that they own if the song is going to be played outside of, basically in a commercial setting. So BMI music license offers the public performance, the right to publicly perform BMI songwriters, composers, and publishers in a business. And we have different licenses for different types of businesses.
Perfect. Vince, do you want to tackle the webcasting side?
Sure. And as Jack had mentioned, the difference between PROs are the writers that we represent. So we represent, and you can find our writers on our website at globalmusicrights.com. But we are similar, if not identical, in scope in the role we play. It's just for each songwriter can be a member of one and only one society or performing rights organization, as well as their songs. So our webcast license is with ICCFA members is for the public performance, as mentioned, of our catalog of the 100,000 plus songs, so that you can publicly perform those in a digital, audio, video, visual content. So through the URL, as well as on the public performance piece that Jack had mentioned, it's for our writers, our songs.
Appreciate it. And I appreciate, because we kind of get those technical terms out of the way, because one of the things that comes up a lot when people are talking about music rights that I think a lot of folks don't understand are the difference between the mechanical rights, sync rights, and performance rights. And Jack, you kind of lead it into this. You said it. Performance rights, that is what's really under the licenses from the performance right organizations.
Correct. Did you want me to expand on that, Paul?
Yeah, please do, because I later on we'll talk about it, but I think it's that sync right, especially, that people really can get confused on. Sure.
So if you kind of go back to the old days and people think about buying a tape or a CD, when they knew they could, that people would try to bootleg those, and they knew that wasn't really the right thing to do, that they need permission to make copies. And so those copies, for the most part, that's a mechanical right. The record label makes copies of those CDs to sell. And for the most part, that money is going back to the record label, back to the artist, with the small compulsory rate for the songwriter. The performance right was then I take that CD, which I bought for private use, and then I put it in my business. And it's just like anything else. If I could buy a sign that says McDonald's on it, and I could put it on my house, I could put it anywhere privately, but the minute I put it on my business, I need to get the copyrights cleared from McDonald's or the copyright holders. So music is no different. And so when you The duplication of those CDs, that's the mechanical right. The performance in a business, that's the performance right. That's songwriters, publishers, and composers. They own the copyrights and the performance right. The label, for the most part, the label gets the lion's share in the artist of the mechanical right. The synchronization right is a type of mechanical right. And that's, again, when you're going to take that music and you're going to copy it, but instead of copying it to an audio CD, you're going to copy it onto a visual performance. So years ago, that wasn't very common. That was done in music videos and things of that nature. It's become much more common nowadays, obviously, with things being recorded onto the internet and then streamed via websites.
That helps a lot. Vince, can you, I want to get one of the last things out of the way, because a lot of people have these questions about artists. How does the actual artist get paid through this relationship?
How they get paid is both on the incoming collection from the licensee, and it is distributed, accordingly. So as far as how they get paid, it's through global music rights for our writers.
Got it. Let's try to jump into some of the more detailed stuff, because some of the basic questions, and I'll start with the basics and try to move on. But so the first question comes up on our music licenses is, how many licenses does somebody need? Is it per location? Is it per business? How does the actual structure work for a music license? Vince, I'll let you go ahead. And
what we do is, on the public performance, we license by legal entity. So by legal entity, there's an agreement per business, if that makes sense.
It does.
Okay.
And we run into a lot of businesses that have multiple locations, entities. So let me be more specific. If I've got 5 funeral homes all under one address, for each legal entity, I need a music license, even though we're all under one address. Is that correct?
It's under one address, correct?
Okay. Jack, anything on your side? Is that?
Our licenses are premise-based. So each location would count as a location on the license.
Okay. Their music license obviously works for them at their location. Does it carry off-site? So we get, again, questions where people are like, hey, we are having a service, we're going somewhere else. Does it continue to cover them?
Our agreement with the ICCFA has a clause in there. Typically our premise-based licenses don't carry off-site, but since that is something that's common in your industry, we ensure that we included language to allow for that within your agreement.
Okay. So let's get more specific again. In today's world, we're having more and more memorial services that are literally anywhere, right? We could go to a hotel, we could go to a bar, we can go to the cemetery. If the funeral home is conducting that service, then they would be covered under either license. Is that correct?
On the BMI license, Paul, I don't know how specific the language is for that, but I can tell you from a business practice, all we're asking for from the ICCFA is the location. And so we're not looking for additional, we don't even have a variable that would address those off-site for additional fees. So yes, from a business perspective, it would cover that.
Okay. Vince, same as well. GMR.
Yeah, I think for the audience, Paul, you'll see there are, if not identical, extremely similar parameters and license coverage for both PROs that you're working with.
Fantastic.
Again, it's the public performance coverage, so the service would be covered.
So this is actually, I think, one of the misnomers, and I might as well throw it in now since I've already messed this whole thing up with my dropping off and trying to come back in and salvage all this. But a lot of people believe that music license is basically the performer, not necessarily the location. And I've always thought that was kind of a misnomer, meaning if I'm going to have a service and I'm going to go, let's say off-site, that the person who's having the service, it's their responsibility. Let me put it in terms of a band. If a band is playing music somewhere, a lot of people think the band has to have a music license, but in fact, that's not really true. Is that correct?
If you look at the way the copyright law is written, anybody associated with the performance could be held responsible. But BMI, as a performing rights organization, we choose to license the business owner. The business owner, a lot of times, these bands aren't legal entities. They're not, it would not be, there would be no consistent way to ensure licensing for the marketplace if we licensed at any other level. And ultimately, it's the business that's making the decision. No different, you use the analogy of a band, say in a bar, the bartenders don't have their own liquor licenses either. So the license happens at the establishment level. That's who's making the decision to bring music in to enhance their business.
Got it. Vince, anything you wanted to add there? Because that's what makes our license so unique is that we can travel to these other entities. And because of our license, we don't need to worry if that business is licensed or not. We are covered with our license for our services that we provide, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. That's a fantastic thing that I think that it's worth really sharing, because a lot of, I think, of our members that have licenses, a lot of times they don't actually realize that.
And Paul, I would just real quick, I would add to that too. If any of the associated parties could license, everybody would point at each other and nobody would be licensed and they'd all have exposure. So now this way, everybody knows there's no vicarious liability. Everybody knows who's responsible. Everybody knows if there's not a license in place, there's only one responsible party to go out and get it.
Fair enough. I also like this because I always look for our members to be able to have benefits. And one of the things I don't think they realize is, music is such a common part of all services. And of course, that's one of the reasons this relationship, I think, works so well, is because, I've been to a lot of funerals. I've conducted a lot of funerals. I don't really know anywhere we don't have some music at some point. And for us to be able to offer that, and what's unique is for a family, they don't have that ability. They don't have that to carry that license on their own, depending on where they go. So this is a great tool we have. I want to go to a cemetery side. More and more families are coming to cemeteries directly to have a service. That cemetery then becomes, quote unquote, the business. Based on everything, if they wanted to perform and have a service, that cemetery then would also be protected if they had the music license, correct?
Correct.
That's right.
Okay. So in this world of ever-changing things, we're seeing more and more of our clients, our members, doing things like memorial concerts. Maybe it's a gathering for families they've served, and they want to have a Christmas memorial service, a gathering. Where does our license fit in the world of a large gathering where we're going to play music? Again, to be very, let's give the example. We're going to have a celebration this Christmas, this holiday season, and we're going to invite hundreds of families to our place to be able to provide a kind of a year-end memorial for everybody. Where does our license sit in a situation like that?
Well, I can speak on the BMI side. Again, the license was written 20 years ago when some of these things weren't contemplated. The license does say that it covers, funeral and memorial services. So again, from a business interpretation, if the focus of that event is the memorial service or the funeral service, then the music would be covered. If the focus of that event, if the draw is a concert, if the draw is the music, then it would be licensed differently and it would be covered under our concert license. I mean, concerts are put on for a lot of different reasons, different benefits and fundraisers and things of that nature. So it's not really the reason for the event. It's whether or not there is an event that the music is complementing, or whether the music is the actual draw, like a concert. You're advertising the name of the artist, come see this artist perform. That would be a concert.
Vince, any thoughts on this as well?
Yeah, it's identical because the definition of what's covered and what's not is federal copyright law. So it's identical for at least for GMR.
Okay. I think it's great.
I think to Jack's point, it would really come down to the
in broad terms, and yet I'm not acting as everybody's lawyer here, but if the flyer says come see the following people playing music, we've really created a concert. If we said in memory of all those over the holiday season come to share, a memorial service, there happens to be music, there's probably the defining line to that.
Correct.
On
From my perspective,
side, that's something then that they would obtain, and maybe this is a side discussion. Is maybe that is something that is a one-time license that people could get then from any organization?
Yes.
We probably a worthwhile event license, and that is something that is readily available to people.
Yes, Paul. And I know at one point you had asked questions about religious services and things. We have an association in that space that has a license that covers their events for licensable music. And they have a similar thing where they do religious services, do have concerts that aren't quite religious services or aren't quite covered under just the normal business activities that different church groups have. And we have the same approach with them as well. If it's a concert, we have a concert license, we have a special events license, and those are readily available and can be licensed for one-off events.
GMR is the new guys. Have you gone down this road yet on a limited concert license that might be available?
Yes. We have similar, if not very similar, license classes and license agreements available. And what we look at is the event itself. Is it a memorial service or is it a concert? How is the public drawn to the event?
That's fantastic. All right. I'm already excited about this because I think that's a great new thing. I think a lot of providers would be interested in. So let's keep going down the new road. We'll switch a little into the webcasting. Again, I mentioned this, and hopefully this doesn't jinx me because it's when I talked about webcasting that my web cut off. But during COVID, we saw a huge increase in webcasting. And we were lucky enough, obviously, to have a webcasting license already available. People learn how to use it. Can we talk a little bit about what that webcasting license actually allows in under your umbrella?
Vince, do you want to go first?
Sure. Go ahead, Jack.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say, so our license covers the public. Well, and first, let me backtrack a little bit. BMI, our web licensing, we license the platform. So if your performance is taking place on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, those platforms are licensed. No additional licensing is needed. If your website has a link to YouTube, it's YouTube that's licensed. If it originates on your platform, then the webcasting component of your license with the ICCFA kicks in and is needed. And that license covers the public performance rights. So it covers the ability to publicly perform that music. It does not cover any of the synchronization rights that may or may not be needed once you made a copy of that and hosted it. If you're streaming it, there's typically no synchronization rights because you're not recording it, you're just streaming it. But if you're recording it and then going to make it available for playback later, then you're making a copy of that song, and that's where the synchronization rights come into play.
Yeah, you just nailed, I think, one of the complicated pieces of this. So I know during COVID, there were a lot of issues with YouTube and Facebook, and part of it was the licensing side. I think I actually had a chance to talk to YouTube and Facebook, and basically a lot of this was automated. So while a lot of times the service would operate live that very first time because of licensing, obviously once it was done, a lot of times it would get tagged, it would get pulled, it would get blocked. Every once in a while, people would get stopped during a program. And again, that's because they're going through YouTube and Facebook. Side note, anytime you're streaming anything, as I've demonstrated so perfectly today, errors can happen. But when you control it on your own site, that's when your license works. But that leads to this issue of streaming versus allowing that to remain on your site so people for 30, 60, 90 days can go in and watch it over. That at that point, that license no longer covers the music. Is that correct?
It covers the performance. So if you want to leave it on your site, allow people to go in and play it, they're still licensed to perform it. The BMI or the PRO license is perpetual. It's the fact that you've now recorded it that a synchronization. Remember, you made a copy. The song was played at the event, and then the song was copied. So now it exists in two places. And so now that you've made a copy of that, there's a synchronization right. And so when you get those takedown notices from YouTube, those are not performing rights organizations. At least it's not BMI. Those are per the terms of whatever the deal is. That, remember, we talked about those mechanical and sync rights with the label. Those labels have agreements with those platforms that could be all different. Like, who knows what their terms are? But when you see a takedown notice, that's because of an agreement that platform has with a label.
Okay. So I want to break that down because there's a lot right there. And again, let's take YouTube and Facebook out because I think that one's the easier one to understand. Once I'll say upload it, it's now recorded because you've uploaded it.
Right.
Now sync rights kick in and you can't do it. That's why it gets blocked. I've had it happen to me on my own videos. Jack, I think you shared a story with me. You've had it happen. And it's very odd because I had a similar situation where I was recording my son for a little video kicking demonstration. And it was there was a football game going on and you could hear some of the music there.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what the computers and AI can hear, and they cut it. But let's go to the funeral home or the cemetery or somebody that has their own site. They live stream the video. So that's on Saturday. Everybody watches it. On Sunday, if they have it and uploaded it to their own site so people could come back in, technically at that point, that music would have to be either blacked out or taken out, or that would be a violation. Would that be correct? Because now we've synced it.
Right. That's where what I would, and I'm kind of shooting from the hip a little bit here, but yeah, as the business owner, for you to host that, you would want to get your synchronization. You would need to clear synchronization rights. That can be very difficult. Because these labels aren't set up to deal with mass licensing. There are some companies that can do that for you. We can maybe talk about that offline. The other thing is if these families want to put it on their own YouTube page, they would still need the synchronization right, but typically they would get notified if that was necessary. In my situation, I got a notice that, hey, we can hear a song in the background of your son's hockey game. Is this for commercial use or are you just sharing it with family? I said, I'm just sharing it with family. They said it's fine. So that may be a better way for these businesses to work with their families, just off the top of my head.
Yeah, I know it's one of the toughest things because, we live in a profession that wants to provide everything to the family. Let's take it to the next level. DVD memorials are still very popular. Of course, now maybe it's not DVD memorials, but it's still memorial videos that they create and show. And one of the issue becomes, a provider, one of our members, what they like to do is add pictures and videos, and then they want to overlay music onto that video. I can share my shoot from the hip method, and Vince and Jack, you can tell me your thoughts. What I've always told people, the way and this is coming from a lawyer / funeral director, is you make the video and then you overlay it with what I will call royalty-free songs or songs that you have sync rights to that have been provided. And then that's what the family can keep. And then for the service, if you want to play the music the family likes, you play that separately. And by playing it separately, it's performance rights, and that's okay. You can play all the music you want, and you can time it all up, but you can't copy it into the video you made. And then when it's all done, the family has a video that they can keep that has royalty-free music on it, and that's been my, I'll call it, ultimate loophole around the DVD memorial. I don't know if you have any thoughts, Vince, of how this could work other than getting sync rights. But that's kind of one of the big questions we get all the time. How do I make a video?
Yeah, and I think for your audience today, it's best for them to get legal advice because it gets complicated, confusing, and you certainly don't want folks to unconsciously violate federal law.
Yeah. Jack, any other thoughts?
Yeah. Yes. Well, I don't know if there are other thoughts, but just to kind of piggyback on what you said, Paul, you're right. I mean, there are companies that provide royalty-free music, and that all that means is that company went out, hired, we call it work for hire. They hired the people to write music for them specifically. So they then own the rights, and then they sell it for a very specific use. So that can be used. You can, obviously, your public performance license covers the public performance. Again, I would look into some of, like, the MLC was created after the Music Modernization Act. That's MLC. You can Google it. There are some companies that have worked with publishers to clear rights for just this type of use. So there are ways to do it. You just got to it would be very difficult to clear rights yourself on the synchronization side, but there are companies that will do that for you.
So a technical side, I don't want to leave it out, is we talked about the music license. You need one license per entity. What about the webcasting license? Because our understanding is it's not per entity anymore. Is it based on domains? Is that the correct way?
Yes, it is for us.
Okay.
Yeah, we can, Paul, our license can cover multiple domains. You would just need to list them out. But yeah, I mean, they each need to be identified and licensed individually, but you can bundle them together on one license.
Okay. But the idea is if I've got, 5 domains that I webcast from, ultimately I'm going to need to make sure each one of those is covered under a license.
Right.
Yes.
Perfect. I saw a couple questions. I apologize. I'm trying to read questions and listen and all that. And I want to leave time for questions, but we've had a couple pop up and they actually flow right into the what I call the myth side of music licenses. And these are some ideas. And I give credit to a lot of people out there because I've had some great questions come up of people that have thought, well, wait, I have the ultimate loophole. So I'll give you an example. So one of the questions is, what if we make a video for the family and all we do is give it to the family? In other words, we make the video and we put music on it, but it's only for the family's use. We give it to them and we don't, I'll say, they didn't say this, but I know what they're thinking. We don't sell it. We don't profit from it, all that. Does that make it okay? By the way, I already know the answer, and you can go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, you still need to get permission. Now, maybe that permission comes free, but you got to get, when somebody owns something, again, I'll use it. I could call, if I take somebody's name and put it on my business and I say, hey, I'm just giving away everything for free, it's still not my right to do that. So you still got to get permission.
The other myth, Vince, I'll let you, if you want to tackle this one. This is another one of my favorites, is the idea that, well, wait a second, if I buy the song, don't I have the right to use it however I want, even without a music license? So I go and I download and pay Apple, 99 cents a song. Yes, that's how old I am. I remember when it was, and I create my library. Can't I just do what I want with it at that point?
Privately, yes, and publicly, no, right? Somebody owns that property. So for you to download and pay 99 cents and listen to it yourself at home or in your car, but publicly is where you'll need a license.
Vince, you just brought up a great thing, and that's that publicly versus privately, because this is this other area, and I said Apple, but, there's lots of these, music, Spotify, Amazon, Sonos, all of these, they have their own, you can have playlists and speakers and play that music. And a common question we get is, well, I have that. Why can't I just play that in my building and use that? And Vince, I'm going to let you answer it again, because...
And again, as defined by the courts for a public performance, if I could hear it as a consumer and randomly walking by, that's what needs to be licensed for the songwriter.
If I could just add, Paul, they've not taken licenses with the PROs for commercial use. They've only licensed their use. Any rebroadcast of their performance is not covered under their license, just like a radio station.
That makes sense. And again, just going through these are other avenues. The idea of, well, what if a family brings in their own music and they play it themselves? Can I avoid my music license then? And I know I'm throwing you softballs, and I know the answer is repetitive, guys, but bear with me because we do get a lot of those questions, and I think it's fair for people to kind of hear it right from you of why this works and what the license actually does.
Yeah, it's. Oh, go ahead, Vince.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jack. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, there's nothing in the copyright law that says who brings it in. You know, if I go to my local coffee shop and I'm listening to music and the owner of the coffee shop says, oh, wait, that guy over there, it's his playlist that's providing music for my customers, that wouldn't remove their liability for needing that license. So the short answer is, regardless of who brings the music in, it's the business that would need the license because they allow, ultimately in legal terms, Paul, because they allow the performance.
Fair enough. Let me go down this road because this would be the question that people come up with is, all right, what if I don't want a music license? I don't want any of the music licenses. What's my option? I know you guys probably don't want to answer this, but
I would love to answer this because the cost of a music license with the ICCFA is literally like, I don't know, I'm not going to go into the exact cost, but we're talking a couple bucks a day. And for the value that Paul referred to earlier, that it brings your customers, I would just ask you to really consider that. You know, we talk to bars and restaurants and they say, oh, it's not worth it. And we're like, well, it comes out to about the cost of 2 beers that you just sold. If the music's not worth it, you're business owners and you should not take out a music license or use music if it does not give you a return on your investment. And I'll tell that to any business. If it can't make you more than a couple bucks a day, then eliminate that music and eliminate that unnecessary cost.
Vince, any thoughts here?
No, I mean, what folks want to think of is that somebody owns that song. And while it's an intangible, somebody wrote it, filed it in federal copyright law, and it's their property. So using it without permission is against the law. And it's been established for hundreds of years. Somebody owns the song and they should be compensated if you're using something they own. So it's that basic. Using music, I mean, you certainly have the option and choice not to use any music, but to steal somebody else's property is against the law in this country.
You don't hear a lot of music coming from countries without performing rights organizations.
Right.
It's how songwriters, it's the reason we have the music we have.
No, I agree. Let me ask you, there are what I will call one option out there because is royalty-free music. Now that's I always tell people, because I have people ask me this, they say, Paul, what if we just use royalty-free music? And what I always tell people is it's a big caveat. And again, love your opinions. Because one, it's hard to truly figure out what is absolutely royalty-free music. One of the examples I'll use is if you take a lot of times older music becomes royalty-free after so many years, copyrights, right? It wears off. But if somebody redoes that song, then they have a copyright on that version. So it's not like I can just sit there and, you know, I'm trying to think of a recent, I just heard Air Supply and Jimmy Buffett did a version of a great Christmas song. And I was shocked to hear both Air Supply and Jimmy Buffett doing a version of it. But what it made me think of is that song is from the 1940s. Probably the original song is royalty-free at this point, but not anymore under those artists. Would that be right?
Yeah. I would say public domain music is maybe a different way to describe that, because royalty-free means they're not getting royalties, and that might be because it's work for hire. But yeah, public domain music is music that's, I think, 70 or 75 years after the death of, so, I mean, you really got to go back more than 100 years. Typically, it's after the death of the copyright holder, And you're right, Paul. Somebody could make a different arrangement of that song. We've heard "Whiskey in the Jar" has been redone a million times. So that, yeah, you have to be careful there.
Current fines, because again, just so people understand, I mean, this is copyright. I mean, this is no small issue. What are the current fines right now for a violation of copyrighted music?
I mean, our understanding, it's $150,000 a song, and it's federal, not state. So this is a federal copyright law, and we hope people appreciate and use a lot of music. The songwriter himself or herself should be compensated, but music brings you to a time and a place. It creates a memory. You listen to music when times are great, and you listen to music for comfort when times are not so great. So support the writer. This is how they make a living, and all we're here is helping them write the next song that you and your family may enjoy or may use for comfort in times of need. But the songwriter needs to be compensated. It's how they make a living, and supporting the arts is critical. It's a foundation, it's a cornerstone. So we would hope folks appreciate music, play a heck of a lot more, and make sure those that create are compensated.
No, I appreciate that. It's a good point to remember, especially for our death care providers out there. I mean, they fight for the rights of all the families, and I think they can appreciate fighting for the rights of the artists that you stand for as well. I guess before we kind of go to some open questions, how do you enforce the music rights? In other words, I've been in death care a long time. I haven't had anybody show up with a PRO, police badge and say, here we are. But I believe you guys have actually historically run sting operations and gone after groups. Can you share any of that?
Vince, you want to go first, or?
Certainly, we would hope folks comply with federal copyright law, and our goal is to ensure compliance and reserve and protect the rights of our writers. So there are many, many ways that those that make a wrong or poor decision, will take that step to protect our writers' rights and their livelihood. There are many ways for us, and I can speak for the other organization I was associated with to make sure that our writers are protected. But when we look at it at an economical perspective, it's extremely, best bargain of the day is to pay for your music license and use as much as the entire catalog hourly, if not daily, as much as you want, as often as you would like. It's extremely economical, and it's a great business decision to make.
Jack, any other thoughts?
No, I'll just echo. I echo to a bit what Vince said. Our job is to grow, is to connect. We were started by music users who wanted access to music, and that's our role, is to give business owners access to music and grow the music of our songwriters and our affiliates. And we're not an enforcement agency. We do have the ability to use that, but we're not the music police. We're here to grow music. And the reason everybody has the great music they have today is in large part due to BMI's effort, along with the other performing rights organizations. So yes, but the fines are severe, and we have enforced them, and but we don't share our litigation strategy.
We've had a couple questions, and we can try to jump into some of these. One of the questions I was asked is, does the license offered through ICCFA cover everything we're discussing? And, very happy to say that they do. Again, we have the music license, and then separately we have our webcasting license through these groups. Historically, and again, I don't want to go too deep, but as far as BMI, CSAC and ASCAP, they're not with us today, but those licenses have always been bundled together. And I think, Jack, you may know more of the history, but that was always kind of put together. Recently, we've just added GMR, and that is also a new available license that we have out there. We've kind of kept that one separate for now, just so people can kind of get their feet wet. But Vince, I encourage everybody. I think one of the hardest things you could ever do as a business is to sit there and say, here are all the songs that we have available, and you can't play any of these. I think it's kind of an all or nothing. You either say, here, play music or don't play music. I think it gets tough when you pick, but that'll be up to members and businesses to decide. But yes, our licenses collectively will cover the music that's out there, almost all of it there. As I'm looking at questions, Vince, Jack, did you have anything else you wanted to add before we get into some questions?
Go ahead,
I would just encourage folks, if they have questions or even after this call, to go to our website. It's hopefully extremely transparent. You can see GMR writers, the songs we represent, just a point and a click. You're able to download our catalog to get all 100,000 plus works. But we appreciate folks supporting songwriters and certainly supporting and utilizing GMR music. So thank you.
Yeah, Paul, I just want to say, again, thank you for having us and giving us this opportunity. It's an honor to be able to sit here in front of your membership, folks that have been supporting songwriters. I mean, I wish I had the numbers in front of me, but the amount of money that your members have provided to songwriters over the last 30 years or whatever have produced a lot of great music, and you can be proud and responsible for that. So I appreciate it.
Some of these questions I was looking to see, we've answered a lot of these. And one thing I wanted to make sure is, Jack and Vince, if you're okay, because we're running up on time. Some of these, there are a couple of very technical questions. One has to do with indemnification through third parties. It's a great question, but it's a little detailed. And what I'll do is send these out to both of you if you want to kind of throw some. And then some people had asked, will this be a transcript available? This recording will be available, although I apologize again for dropping off. But we will make a transcript, so it might be easier to read. And we'll make that available to everybody. But I think that covers about everything. Again, I want to thank you both for kind of shining a light on this. At the timing, like I said, couldn't be better. I'll throw, somebody brought this up, and I had actually mentioned it too. We've been hearing about other organizations, and that's not even probably, there are other businesses that are going out to businesses, including death care, basically saying, hey, you don't need a music license, or your music license won't actually cover this. And they're offering new products. And I don't know if you're familiar with any of these groups out there, but, and I don't know if you have any thoughts on this. And again, I'm not trying to single anyone out, but I know there's some groups, and some of them are under like Spotify for businesses and groups like, I think, Soundtrack. There's companies that are basically producing music that businesses can use. So I think they have I'm going to call it a limited, probably synchronization right to copy those and then to license them out. Do you have any thoughts? I mean, can you shine a light on what might be different and why this license is a broader coverage? Because I don't think people understand how broad the coverage is. Again, to be able to go off-site, to be able to play any music, to do all that. If you can shine a light on that before we go.
Yeah, what you're describing, and Paul, I apologize. You had mentioned Soundtrack. That Soundtrack Your Brand. That's I answered regarding the royalty-free or music for hire. Soundtrack Your Brand, Mood Music. These are commercial music services. They're licensed. BMI has a license with most major commercial music services, and it's to your point though, it's a very limited scope. That license that they have only covers their service. It only covers, it's not interactive, so you can't choose your songs. You got to play whatever's on their feed. It cannot be used as foreground music. It can't be used in a place where there's an admission charge. There's just a number of limitations to that. So you will hear it as like background music in a department store, or they used to refer to it as elevator music. That was kind of the scope of the license, was that old elevator music was Muzak. Muzak became Mood Media. And those are the licenses you're describing. In Soundtrack Your Brand, you can import like a Spotify playlist, but it's not Spotify, and it's So it's a commercial music service.
Appreciate that. Again, now some questions are popping up. I want to make sure, because this was actually brought up as well, and I'm going to switch gears back to webcasting. I promise we'll end here soon. But under webcasting, again, the technology is going so quick, right? So the idea is we're constantly seeing new things. We talk a lot about streaming on our site. We discussed that. We talked about YouTube and Facebook. What about a provider that offers streaming services? So in other words, XYZ company goes to the funeral home, the cemetery, and says, hey, we will stream it for you. We come in, we put up the equipment, and we stream it on our domain. At that point, as long as with that domain, that business, they would need the music license. Would that be correct? Or who would need that streaming license?
That's how BMI does it. BMI licenses the domain that is hosting the stream.
It's identical for us. For
all right. So again, the advice would be if you were a provider and you were going to use I'll call it a streaming service, you would probably want to make sure and verify they have a license so that it would be protected when they send it over.
Yeah, and usually these companies, they make a pretty big deal of that. So you can usually find that on their website, and you can usually scour their website and find that whether or not they claim to be licensed with the PROs.
Okay.
Or check with us.
Speaking of that, that's probably I'll call it we will make this the last question, but a lot of times we provide people a license through us, through ICCFA as members. And a lot of people, I think, are curious as to, well, I want, what's the actual license from BMI or GMR? And we always tell people, says basically, and again, make sure I explain this right. ICCFA holds the umbrella of the license, and then we let everybody who's under our license. And I believe it's one of the reasons why we kind of have this great relationship, because you don't want to have to worry about trying to track and send out 10,000 individual licenses and work with that. We take on that burden, and every year we let you know. But them being under our umbrella, that's all you need to know, correct? They don't need, technically they don't need anything other than to know their license. Would that be correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. We just want to make sure all our members know that, hey, they're covered, they're protected, and again, one thing I'm going to share with everybody, we will be posting more FAQs up from everybody. We've gotten almost all the PROs, organizations to contribute to those. And then we're also going to, on our site, have a spot where you can go and click on each one of the PROs, again, BMI, GMR, CSAC, and ASCAP. So you can kind of see a little more about each one of them on what's included and why it's so important to have this music license. Gentlemen, I actually, what I'd love to do is I want to invite you. I'd like to do this again, maybe later on next year. That's only a month away, so that's not that far.
Yeah.
But later on in the year, and talk about it, because I'm going to circle back. I want to talk to you about some of these things you brought up, including this maybe event license maybe we can have for members. I think might be a fantastic little benefit that people would be interested in.
Yeah, would love to follow up.
Great. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Jack, thank you very much for your time today. Apologies again, but
fantastic information, and that's truly all we really wanted and needed. Thanks,
Great.
everyone.
Thanks, Paul.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
I want to again thank everybody for being part of this today. Transcripts will be made available. I don't know if anybody, Cindy, if anybody wants to jump back on here, but otherwise, thanks for your time today. If you have any questions, please submit those. We can get those answered. We plan on, there are some other questions we didn't get a chance to get to. We will answer all questions and make them available to everybody so they can see. Again, take advantage of your membership because this music license is probably one of the most powerful things I think we have. Again, funeral homes, cemeteries, anybody that's having service with families, it's important to have and use. And then also don't forget that ICCFA, we have been able to negotiate a rate with GMR. I believe right now we are the only association that has that available. So you really should strongly consider making sure that you cover all music, all songs that you might be available to your family. So with that, thanks everybody. We'll see you next time.